And all the talk since then has been the fingers being pointed at Rio Ferdinand. There's been talk about the central midfield. What was your take on what happened?
Well, every time Manchester United lose a football game, there's an inquest. And they haven't played well in the early parts of this season. They've sort of gone behind. This is 5 goals, I think. And on Saturday was a culmination of what's been happening in previous weeks. And, you know, we'll show all 3 goals. But this is a simple thing. Actually, Manchester United here, they're all behind the ball. Not unusual. The ball's been switched from side to side. And basically, all those players that are boxed there at Manchester United just move over to the other side. And yes, people will talk about Rio Ferdinand. That's the big question this morning in terms of it. But every goal that I'm going to show you here now, there are 4 or 5 fundamental errors. First of all, they go over. And I think the biggest problem, and I need to show you at the start, is there. It's there. Because we talk about a piece of string. We talk about defenders moving across the pitch together. And I think personally that's where the issue starts. Johnny Evans and the gap between him and Rio Ferdinand is going to become so big. Yes, Michael Carrick could come across. And the first mistake is that Nani's lost the 1-2. There's no surprise there that Nani is going to lose a 1-2 during the game. Because he's an attacking-minded player, it's going to happen. Defoe has made a fantastic run to clear Rio Ferdinand out. Now, at this point now, Johnny Evans has to react. At this point now, he's got to get across here. He's got to force Patrice Evra has got to get across in with him, and they've got to tighten that back four. The gaps are too big. The gaps between the back four players are too big. And if we see at its widest point here, which is around there now, I mean, that's something like 25, 30 yards, so close to goal. That can't happen. That can't happen. You cannot have your 2 centre-backs as split as that. You've got to have them gaps close. And you can talk about midfield players, and you can talk about wingers not staying runners all you like. And as I stop it there now, just pull it back a touch, Johnny Evans, the first time he can make contact with him, he's 7 yards from his own goal. He's no chance at that point. He's absolutely no chance. And even if he wants to tongue, he can slip it across to Dempsey. And he's not picked up either. So in terms of the first goal, it was a sign of what was to come. The gaps between the defence, the back four were never attached. And looking at this goal now, Manchester United at home will always attack with numbers. So you've got 8 of their players attacking it. As Dembele picks that up there, Raphael, there's the goal scorer, Gareth Bale. You've got Paul Scholes who's about to engage Dembele. Now if Dembele ran at Paul Scholes 15 times, he'd probably beat him 14 times. He would be most, but he's powerful, he's strong, and Paul Scholes is going to struggle against him. Again, like the Nani one, it's not the end of the world that 80, 90 yards from your goal that one of your midfield players gets beat. It happens regularly. Move it forward. There. As he goes across the ball, Raphael can do one of 2 things for me. He can either go in to there with the run of Bale. Bale's going to make a run in here. He's the counter-attacking threat. He's the one that before the game will have been targeted as being a big counter-attacking threat. Or he sprints back and gets alongside Rio Ferdinand into his right-back position. We'll play it on. He does neither. He just stands there. I'm going to stop it again there now. He's out the game now. Gareth Bale's lost him. And you've got the classic scenario of your back four, basically, your 2 full-backs are 20 yards in front of your 2 centre-backs. This happened too many times. It's happened too many times.
The central defenders are exposed.
In the first part of this season. You can focus on a million things in this game. Van Persie needs to be more aggressive from the front. The wide midfield players need to tuck in potentially a little bit more and support Carrick and Scholes. Carrick and Scholes potentially could be a little bit deeper and provide more protection. Rio Ferdinand and Johnny Evans didn't have good games on Saturday and could defend better one-on-one. But if there was one big thing that I would think that Alex Ferguson is ramming into these players since this game and the first parts of the season, is that these 2 have got to get back in and make that a back four quicker. No problem with going forward. I played at Old Trafford for 15 years. You can both go forward anytime you want. They've got to be like that. They've got to get back quickly. They've got to sprint back. Again, mention Jermaine Defoe. We've got to mention Tottenham during these moments. I'm going to take it forward slightly. As Gareth Bale picks it up there, look at Jermaine Defoe. That run he's going to make. Johnny Evans is too deep because he's worried about Jermaine Defoe's pace. He's worried about Jermaine Defoe's pace. He's thinking, right, I've got a problem here. This is a 2-on-2 developing. Patrice Evra has to get in there. move it forward. The minute that happens now, the gap, again, we talked about the gap on the first goal, the gap between centre-half and full-back is huge. It's huge. You cannot have that level of gap. You've got Gareth Bale, Aaron Lennon's, Dembele's, Defoe's. These are players who can play. And that's what happened on Saturday. They got punished by players who could play. And in previous weeks, potentially, there were situations where they didn't get punished. And, you know, Rio Ferdinand's ended up in a straight race with Bale. And people will say Rio Ferdinand's lost the pace, a yard of pace. Maybe he has. I think he'd have struggled in that position 5-6 years ago. I really do.
He was the full-back, if you like. It sounds like the team as a whole, from what you're saying, you talked about Van Persie, the team as a whole has got to defend better.
He's the one that's going to take the hit. Because he's the one that's involved. He's the one that's chasing Vertonghen. He's the one that's chasing Bale. He's the one that's taking the hit. There are 4 or 5 mistakes on each of those goals. You should never... I played with... Rio Ferdinand is a great centre-back. He's a quick centre-back. He's still quick. He's still quicker than Steve Bruce. He's still quicker than Tony Adams. He's still quicker than John Terry. How many times do you see those players isolated one-on-one? Because you've got to get... You can go forward, but you've got to get back in quickly. You've got to get back in quickly. You've got to understand the pace of the players you're playing against. Lennon and Bale will run past most players at any point in the prime. You've got to tuck in alongside, attach the 2 full-backs to your centre-backs.
And yet, Gary, the second half was a completely different story, wasn't it?
It was magnificent. I mean, the change, obviously, Wayne Rooney at half-time, the change in attitude was completely different. This is the first goal. At this point, then, you're thinking, this is a Manchester United win. Tottenham are going to get done here. It's a good goal. The crowd are up. Nani sprints for the ball. They all get back to the halfway line. And you're thinking to yourself, here we go. Because the
atmosphere... thinking, oh, no.
Tottenham, at that point, if United had just kept it at 2-1 for another few minutes, but then this goes and happens. 1 minute later.
The other end.
Up the other end. And again, we're just going to play this slowly. It's a diagonal ball. Again, Rio Ferdinand is left exposed one-on-one there. Raphael's in front. Again, not a problem. Manchester United right back can go forward. There's Patrice Evra, there's Johnny Evans. Forget everything else in the team. If you played 400 attacks against the back 4 that were tight together like that, you might not concede a goal. Because if the back 4 stays through, it's difficult. I think this is the goal that Rio Ferdinand will be most disappointed with. Because he should clear that first ball. And at that point there, then, he's not got to allow Jermaine Defoe to come out of that mess, to come out of that side. He's got to either put him in the stand, he's got to nick it out for a throw-in, he's got to do something. He can't let that happen. That's a mistake. But that gap there is enormous again. It's 40 yards between left-back and centre-back. And the reason I mention that is because as the goal develops, and I'm going to mention again, Raphael's come back into a position where and Bale's going to make a run shortly into that position there. So as the ball comes back inside, I don't think Johnny Evans can do anything here now. I think they're not in a bad position. I think there's a slight threat from him. He's the goal scorer, by the way. There's the goal scorer there. Now, I think Patrice Evra should see that happening. Straight away, there's problems. Warning signs, alarm bells, whatever you want to call them. The ball moves on. Raphael gets square to the ball and lets the run of Bale go in behind him. Mistake number 2. This gap is still big. Let's play it on again. And as that happens there now, as that ball is shot into Lindegaard, again we talked about the gaps. If you move across with a piece of string in line, that goal can be prevented. And obviously Rio's taken a lot of the stick this morning because he was involved in all 3 goals to the visible eye. Honestly, to play centre-back on Saturday would have been tough. They didn't play well, Rio and Johnny. At times they were too deep. The movement from Tottenham was fantastic. They were up against quick players. But your back 4 has got to get in place. And I think you saw the reaction last year after the 6-1. You've seen in years gone by Southampton and Newcastle, the 5-1 and 6-3. There's always a watershed moment in the early parts of the season. Because these lads, they're not like, they get bored. They get bored. There's nothing to play for. They just want to get through Christmas, get to March and start fighting for championships and trophies. That's when they become interested. But what you'll see, I think, in these next 2 games, he'll have got right in about them, Sir Alex Ferguson, and said, right, don't mind you going forward, but get back into your shape, particularly you as a back 4, and get together to allow those gaps not to be, if you like, too big between all players. And that's the problem on Saturday with 3 goals. The gaps are huge.
And the problem has been conceding goals early stage of this season. Most recent